Hello viewers, I welcome you all to our YouTube channel. Today, the topic is FAQ and case studies in relation to the new concept of e-invoice in GST. Okay, so I've divided this into three parts. First, let me explain you why government has introduced the concept of e-invoice. What was the need for it? Second, what is the limit for the applicability of e-invoicing to the suppliers? And finally, we will discuss 15 to 18 FAQ and case studies. When I supply exempt goods, is the invoice required? If I'm supplying non-taxable, is the invoice required? There are plenty of FAQs that are prepared. So let us begin today's topic, e-invoice, FAQ and case studies. So first part, why the concept of e-invoice is required in GST law. Let us understand that. See, there are some fraud taxpayers, cheater taxpayer, the fake suppliers. Now what they are doing, they are not actually supplying goods. They are neither supplying services, no actual supply of goods, no supply of service. What they used to do, they were preparing fake invoices, fake documents, fake e-way bill, and all this fake data they were uploading in their GSTR1. ठीक है ये लोग अपलोड करते थे डेटा इन देयर GSTR1. There was no supply actually, and on the basis of the fake GSTR1, this fake ITC was availed by the recipient in GSTR3B. So there was no supply actually happening of either goods or service. Just एक document बनता था fake. Okay, so इसके बेस पे fake input tax credit recipient लेता था, and there were some backdated invoice which were being generated. See, say I was a supplier for financial year 2021. For example, during my audit of books of accounts in the month of when? September 2021. 6 months के बाद ही audit होता है. So say 6 months from the end of financial year, I identified that my turnover for the financial year 2021 is very less. There will be problem in getting bank loan. Ratio calculation, the shareholders will kill me. Now what to do? So what suppliers used to do? In the month of September, 6 months from the end of financial year, they were generating backdated invoice. So suppliers were generating, for example, backdated invoice say of March 2021. And they were uploading this data, this fake invoice generate कर देते थे March 21 में. बस ऐसे invoice बना दिया, कोई sell नहीं होता था, there were no service, बस fake invoice. And they were uploading this data in their GSTR1 and 3B and were paying interest on it. And ऐसे करके सेल बढ़ा देते थे. So ये सब fake चीजें होती थी. So government was angry. Government were thinking recipients are issuing fake documents. They are getting involved in GST fraud. They need to do something. Because government was losing crores of GST revenue. हम ऐसे fake ITC लेके government का बहुत revenue खा गए थे. So there was always shortfall of government in GST collection. That's why government introduced new sub rule. Rule 48 sub rule 4 of the CGST rules. The concept of invoicing was introduced in GST law. Okay, with effect from 1st of October 2020. ये concept government ने introduce किया. Concept of invoicing. ये क्या concept है? Say every registered person whose aggregate annual turnover in say financial year 17-18 or in financial year 18-19 or in financial year 19-20 in any one of the preceding 3 years exceeds rupees 500 crore in any one of the preceding 3 years. तीन में से कोई भी एक साल 500 crore के ऊपर aggregate annual turnover हुआ तो such supplier, such registered person are required to generate e-invoice from 1st October 20. फिर इसमें 30 डेज का रिलैक्सेशन दिया था, बट ये सब रूल 48 सब रूल 4 ऑफ रूल 48 इंट्रोड्यूस हो गया था. ओके, व्हेन द एग्रीगेट एनुअल टर्नओवर exceed rupees 500 crore in any one of the preceding 3 years, that supplier, that registered person was required to generate e-invoice. Now there was one ambiguity in it. Say for example, I am a supplier. I am supplying taxable goods or service of rupees 250 crore. फिर मैं कुछ एग्जाम सप्लाईज भी देता था से ऑफ 150 करोड़. Some non-GST supply was there, petrol, diesel, etc. 100 crore. And I used also to export zero rated supply, 50 crore. So if you total it, my total supply, total turnover was 550 crore, greater than 500 crore. I questioned to government that am I required to get registered on e-invoice portal? क्या मुझे invoice बनाना है? Since my taxable supply is only 250 crore, but my total supply is 550 crore. क्या करना है? See section 2 subsection 6 of the CGST Act. वो क्या कहता है? Aggregate annual turnover. It include taxable supply. It includes exempt supplies. It includes nil rated supply. It also includes non-GST supply and non-taxable and even exports and even branch transfer to distinct person. Okay, so when the aggregate annual turnover is discussed, it means total of all this supply is to be aggregated. If that aggregate turnover exceed rupees 500 crore, invoice is required. So since my aggregate annual turnover is 550 crore, greater than 500 crore, I am liable to generate e-invoice. मुझे invoice portal पे register होना. ओके, फिर कौन से इनवॉइस के लिए इनवॉइस बनाना है, दैट वी विल डिस्कस इन एफएक्यू एंड केस स्टडीज. जस्ट आई एम लायबल टू गेट रजिस्टर्ड एज फॉर जनरेशन ऑफ ई इनवॉइस. ठीक है. अब आया नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 88 ऑब्लिक 2020. ये कब आया? 10th of November 2020. What government changed? See what this notification said. Notification 88 oblique 2020 dated 10th of November. This limit of 500 crore for the generation of e-invoice was amended. It was amended with effect from 1st Jan 2021. ये जो 500 crore की लिमिट थी ना, उसको चेंज कर दिया. Now क्या लिमिट आई सर? Every registered person whose aggregate annual turnover either in financial year 1718 or in 1819 or in 1920 exceed rupees 100 crore only. So limit 500 को change करके अब कर दी 100 crore from 1st Jan 21 in any one of the preceding 3 years. That registered supplier is required to generate e-invoice. उसको invoice portal पे register होना है. Clear. This notification 88 changed the limit of 500 crore to 100 crore. Now, one important update. One important update. The update is new notification number 5 oblique 2021. एक और notification आया सर. अब ये notification क्या कहता है ये सुनो. Government introduced notification 05 oblique 21 dated 8th of March 2021. Again, this limit of 100 crore is amended. Okay, the limit for generation of e-invoice is amended from 1st April 21. ये notification applicable होगा from 1st April 21. क्या कहता है ये? Every registered person whose aggregate annual turnover either in financial year 1718, 1819, 1920 exceed rupees only 50 crore in any one of the preceding 3 years. 50 crore kar di nahi limit. Then such registered supplier is required to generate e-invoice. So यहाँ पे भी e-invoice बनाना पड़ेगा from 1st April 21. जिनका भी turnover, aggregate annual turnover exceed rupees 50 crore, sir, e-invoice is बनाना पड़ेगा. It is required. So now the new limit, new update is this. If your turnover is above 50 crore in any one of the preceding 3 years, please generate e-invoice. Okay, now taxpayers are furious. What is this? Are we going to require to generate e-invoice on e-invoice portal? हमारा सॉफ्टवेयर अब डिलीट कर दे. हम तो सॉफ्टवेयर में इनवॉइस बनाते थे. Now should we generate all the invoice on e-invoice portal? It may take so much time. Also portal might have so many problems. कभी कभी सपोर्ट नहीं करता. Now government clarified this. Government said no, no boss, it is not that way. Taxpayers shall continue to prepare physical invoice on their tally software, SAP, Oracle, or whatever accounting and billing software they are using. So do you have to continue prepare your invoice on your regular software only? Only. Such software shall prepare according to the schema of invoice and they shall generate JSN file. जैसे invoice बन गया, software generate करेगी JSN file and this JSN file shall be uploaded on invoice portal. This is the portal site invoice1.gst.gov.in. I will show you in 2 minutes. And this portal through this JSN file shall generate IRN invoice reference number along with QR code. अब ये देखो इस तरीके से दिखेगा. So when I generate invoice through my regular software, I generate JSN file and upload. The e-invoice portal will give me this. See, you can see this. This is a QR code. Okay, and ये देखो 16 digits. Sorry, ये देखो हमारा IRN invoice reference number. So now this invoice is valid. So you don't have to prepare entire invoice on invoice portal and nothing to do like it. Prepare in your software and then that JSN file which you will upload on invoice portal, that we will give you this QR code and this e-invoice IRN invoice reference number. बस ये है. And it is very simple. I will show you the demo also. ठीक है. Now question आता है how to generate e-invoice. कैसे करें ये मैंने सिर्फ डेमो बताया ना. अब देखो सुनो. First of all, whosoever's turnover is exceeding 50 crore in any one of the preceding 3 years, those supplier required to register on e-invoice portal. कहाँ जाना है आपको? इस वेबसाइट पे einvoice1.gst.gov.in. यहाँ पे आपको रजिस्टर होना है सर. तो रजिस्ट्रेशन में पोर्टल लॉग इन करना है. रजिस्ट्रेशन में आप लोग पोर्टल लॉग इन करना है. रजिस्टर हो जाओ फर्स्ट that you are liable for e-invoice. Okay, now how to generate? Register हो गए. Now how to generate e-invoice? Say मैं एक example देता हूँ Tally software का because I was using it. So now say this is your regular invoice that you have generated in your software. ये आपका invoice है जो आपने software में बनाया. Correct. Now the software is linked to invoice portal. So it is showing generate e-invoice. यहाँ पे सिर्फ आप क्लिक कीजिए. ऑटोमेटिक अपलोडेड ई इनवॉइस आ जाएगा. उन्होंने लिंक करके रखा है. ये देखो ये जनरेट हो गया आपका IRN इनवॉइस रेफरेंस नंबर एंड इट विल आल्सो गिव यू कॉपी ऑफ दैट ई इनवॉइस. ये देखो आ गया. ये आपका IRN नंबर भी है एंड QR कोड भी है. दोनों चीजें. नाउ दिस इज अ वैलिड इनवॉइस. ये आपको रिसिपेंट्स पे इश्यू करना है. डोंट इश्यू फिजिकल, इश्यू दिस वाला ई इनवॉइस. Correct. So ये आपको ध्यान रखना है. Now this is how you have to prepare the invoice. Get registered, link your software with the e-invoice portal and आप easily e-invoice बना सकते हो. Matter of seconds. Correct. Now few FAQs and case studies. Part number 2 I want to discuss. क्या कुछ FAQ है, क्या कुछ case study है, वो discuss करते हैं. E-invoice not enabled. ठीक है. Example 1. Say I am a supplier. My turnover is above 1000 crore. 1000 crore 500 करोड़ से तो वे ज्यादा. ठीक है. अभी तो लिमिट 50 करोड़ है. My turnover is 1000 crore. I am liable for e-invoice. मुझे इनवॉइस बनाना है बट क्या हो रहा है? The e-invoicing is not enabled on e-invoice portal. जब मैं लॉग इन करता हूँ, रजिस्टर करने की ट्राई करता हूँ, तो this e-invoice is throwing a message. Say I'm putting my GST number. It is saying you're not enabled to prepare any invoice. What is this? Some error हो सकती है, right? So what is the solution? Solution is simple. See, what is the solution? In e-invoice portal, there is a feature of e-invoice enablement. There is one more feature of e-invoice enablement. See, आप जब log in करते हो, registration में एक option है e-invoice enablement कि मैं आप liable हो, so आप enable करके दो मुझे और. So आप यहाँ पे नंबर डालिए, आपकी डिटेल्स आ जाएगी GST की. सिर्फ आपको अग्री करना है एंड OTP प्रेस करना है. पोर्टल आपको लॉग इन करने देगा फ्यूचर. ठीक है. सो ये आप सामने से ई इनवॉइस का कर सकते हैं. ओके. व्हेन यू आर लायबल बट पोर्टल इज सेइंग नॉट लायबल. से वाइस वर्सा. ई इनवॉइस यू आर नॉट लायबल but erroneously enabled by the portal. What to do? Say my turnover is only 20 crore, below 50 crore. I am not liable for e-invoice, but this e-invoicing portal is erroneously throwing message that I am liable. Now what to do? अब क्या करें? ऐसा तो कोई पोर्टल में ऑप्शन नहीं है e-invoice disablement, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. So now I request what to do. You have to put an email to GST help desk, GST grievance redressal portal पे आप करिए complaint that I am not liable sir. Wrongly I am unable, please disable me. Action shall be taken in few days. Action ली जाएगी. And ये please करना. That's why I'm requesting all the taxpayer, whether your turnover is 1 crore, 10 lakh, 500 crore, please check your status. अगर wrongly unable हो गया है, तो please disable भी करवा लीजिए. Okay? So ये कुछ FAQs थे. अब next FAQ. So let us move to next FAQ. The FAQ is amendment, modification, change in the generated e-invoice. That is the FAQ. Say I'm a supplier. I have already generated one e-invoice, okay, which is incorrect or there was some error. Now, error could be in anything. It may either be in taxable value, the error could be in the rate of GST, the error could be in the place of supply, or I have written wrong invoice number. My query, whether I can amend, modify, change, rectify already generated e-invoice. Can I do anything? That is my query. Now listen, what is the solution? E-invoice, once generated, it can never ever be rectified, modified, amended, change कुछ नहीं हो सकता. एक बार बन गया तो बन गया. Just like e-waybill. Okay, nothing you can do. But there is one solution. There is one solution. Supplier may cancel. आप change नहीं कर सकते. I agree. But I have the right to cancel this e-invoice. There is a time limit. Within 24 hours of the generation, I am required to cancel this e-invoice. If there is a mistake, I cannot change it, but I can cancel it. Okay, mistake is crime in this case. After 24 hours, I cannot even cancel. So please be very careful while you generate e-invoice. There is no option of amendment, only option of cancellation within 24 hours. After that, nothing can be done. Okay, so next FAQ is in relation to that point only. Suppose 24 hours have expired. Now what to do? I have generated an invoice which was incorrect. There was error in invoice number, or there was error in place of supply, wrong state return. Mistake is realized by me. But after 24 hours of generation of invoice, now what is the solution? What is the possible solution? Listen to the solution. While filing GSTR1, see that e-invoice, I can't do anything, that's gone. But while I file GSTR1 for outward supply, I need to mention correct invoice number. I need to mention, say, place of supply was wrong. So I need to mention correct place of supply. And this mistake, error is to be rectified while filing GSTR1. Okay, so your invoice may be different. वो अलग होगा, but GSTR1 में आप ये mistake rectify कर सकते हो. Additionally, what you need to do, it is advisable, as per my view, you should inform such discrepancy, such difference in writing to your jurisdictional GST officer. आप अपने GST officer को writing में दे दो कि ये mistake हुई है. E-invoice, maybe amount is different, invoice number may be different, but GST portal पे we have done it correctly. So please condone our delay or please condone this mistake. This writing में आप दे दो अपने ऑफिसर. ठीक है, this is the possible solution. Correct. Now next FAQ, say cancellation of e-invoice after 24 hours. वही है लेकिन कुछ अलग है इस केस. This time our supplied goods of say 10 lakh plus 18% GST. Mistake, I realized that by mistake I have generated e-invoice as 1 lakh plus GST. So party को तो 2B में कितना दिखा client को? Only 1 lakh plus 18%. This mistake I've realized after 24 hours. 24 hours have expired. I cannot change. I cannot cancel. I can't do anything. Again, what is the possible solution? Possible solution is same as discussed in the previous slide. जब मैं GSTR1 file करूंगा, whenever I file GSTR1 for outward supply, I will mention correct amount. 1 lakh को मैं चेंज करके 10 लाख कर सकता हूँ. GSTR1 allows to change. ठीक है, ई इनवॉइस से ऑटोमेटिक आएगा in GSTR1, but you can still change it. And also it is advisable to inform your jurisdictional GST officer this is the mistake which has happened. But the party may dispute. They saying no, the invoice is showing 1 lakh. Our ITC may get reversed. ये तो हमने किया, but see that this is one more option as per my view. See, you may generate one debit note of say 9 lakh plus 18% as the invoice. ठीक है, आप एक डेबिट नोट जनरेट कर सकते हो 9 लाख रुपीज प्लस 18% जीएसटी एंड ये आप क्लाइंट को दे दो, बट दिस मे बी डिस्प्यूटेड इन फ्यूचर। ठीक है, जीएसटी डिपार्टमेंट बोलेगा वाई डेबिट नोट, इट मे बी डिस्प्यूटेड इन फ्यूचर, सो नॉट एडवाइजेबल। ठीक है, सो मैं आपको एडवाइस करूंगा दैट चेंज योर जीएसटी R1, inform this discrepancy to the jurisdictional GST officer, that only. This debit note, don't do it. This is just there in FAQ, that's why I mentioned it. So my advice, change GST R1, inform the discrepancy to your jurisdictional GST officer. Correct. Next, e-invoice for exempt supply and nil rated supply. Example, say I am a supplier, मैं fruit sell करता हूँ, nil rated supply, ठीक है, एंड मैं स्कूल में बच्चों को पढ़ाता हूँ, exempt supply. Now GST is nil. GST is exempted. There is no question of evasion of GST, right? GST nil है, exempt है, तो GST हमने चोरी करने का क्वेश्चन आता है? नहीं आता है. So my query, is the invoice required for the supply of exempt or nil rated supply? क्या मैं अगर exempt supply करता हूँ, if I supply nil rated supply, am I required to generate e-invoice? Listen carefully. E-invoice is applicable only for taxable goods or taxable service and export of goods and services. And उसके relation में debit and credit note. Okay, e-invoice is not required to be generated for nil rated supply or exempt supply. इसके लिए जरूरत ही नहीं. No need for e-invoice. Very good. So अगर आप कोई exempt goods या exempt service supply कर रहे हो, e-invoice is not required. Regular आप अपना tax invoice software से बना के दे सकते हो. Now let me explain you one more important point, high cease sale. First let me explain you high cease sales होता क्या है, and then I will explain you how e-invoice work in that case. Example, say Mr. Ratan Tata, he has placed an order for import of goods of say rupees 50 lakh from London. So he's going to import goods of rupees 50 lakh from London. ओके, ये गुड्स आए, लंदन वालों ने ये गुड्स ट्रांसपोर्ट कर दिए, दे हैव एक्सपोर्टेड फ्रॉम लंदन एंड गुड्स आर कमिंग टू इंडिया, अभी भी रास्ते में, गुड्स आर स्टिल इन ट्रांजिट, गुड्स हैव नॉट येट क्रॉस कस्टम फ्रंटियर्स ऑफ इंडिया, इंडिया के पानी में भी नहीं पहुंचे, दे आर स्टिल इन ट्रांजिट. ओके, इंडियन कस्टम पोर्ट तक नहीं पहुंचा. नाउ व्हेन द गुड्स वर स्टिल इन ट्रांजिट, goods have not reached the custom frontier, तब भी Mr. Ratan Tata sold these goods, ownership transferred for rupees 60 lakh to Mr. Mukesh Ambani sir. So he prepared the invoice of goods say for rupees 60 lakh कि ये goods की ownership आज से आपकी, sales agreement बना लिया of rupees 60 lakh, ये देखो invoice भी दे दिया. So now he had imported goods of 50 lakh, Ratan Tata sir, and he sold the goods for rupees 60 lakh. Ownership is gone. And now what will happen? ये goods लेने कौन जाएंगे? Mr. Mukesh Ambani. Ownership is now of Mukesh Ambani. So its supply को बोलते हैं high cease sales. Its supply is known as high cease sales. If the original importer, Mr. Ratan Tata, who is importing the goods, prior to goods crossing custom frontier, he sells the goods to some person. Such supply is known as high cease sales. ठीक है, सच हाई सीज सेल्स जो करते हैं मिस्टर रतन टाटा सर, जो 60 लाख में सेल कर दिया बिफोर द गुड्स क्रॉसिंग इंडियन कस्टम फ्रंटियर, उसके पहले ही सेल कर दिया ना, सच सप्लायर क्लासिफाइड अंडर शेड्यूल 3 नॉन टैक्सेबल सप्लाई, इस पे जीएसटी नहीं आता है. हाई सीज सेल्स आप एग्जाम भी बोल सकते हो, बट द करेक्ट लैंग्वेज इज हाई सीज सेल आर क्लासिफाइड इन शेड्यूल 3 नॉन टैक्सेबल सप्लाई, नो जीएसटी. इसको हम बोलते हैं हाई सीज सेल. गुड्स इंडिया में आए रतन टाटा के पास, उसके पहले उन्होंने सेल किए, ये जो सेल किया है 60 लाख का, इसको बोलते हैं हाई सीज सेल, नो जीएसटी. अब ई इनवॉइसिंग समझते हैं फॉर हाई सीज सेल्स. अगर इट्स आई एम अ सप्लायर, नाउ आई हैव सप्लाइड गुड्स फॉर हाई सीज सेल, बट बिफोर गुड्स क्रॉसिंग इंडियन फ्रंटियर आई सोल्ड द गुड्स, सो आई हैव सोल्ड फॉर हाई सीज सेल say for ₹1 crore. ठीक है, now GST is nil, exempted, it's non-taxable supply, so there is no question of evasion of GST, right? So मेरी query है government से, now there is no evasion, should I need e-invoice for non-taxable supply, for schedule 3 supplies? Is there any need for e-invoice? See what government just now told, that e-invoice is required only for taxable goods or services. या फिर एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, राइट? सो इनवॉइस इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड फॉर हाई सी सेल्स, चाहे इफ गुड्स आर एग्जम्प्टेड और नील रेटेड या नॉन जीएसटी हो या नॉन टैक्सेबल हो, सारे केसेस में इनवॉइस इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. So if the goods or service are nil, exempted, non-GST, non-taxable, e-invoice का जरूरत नहीं. So high case sale में e-invoice shall not be applicable. Even third party shipment जो outside India होती है, e-invoice is not applicable. करेक्ट? ठीक है, सो ये एक अच्छा था. अब आता है नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, ई इनवॉइस फॉर एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ गुड्स और एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ सर्विस. ये सुनो, this time I am exporter. I am exporting taxable goods or taxable service, or I am exporting exempted goods और exempted services. देखो स्मार्ट लिया मैंने, क्वेश्चन रेज किया है. टैक्सेबल गुड्स भी है सर, एंड इवन exempted goods और सर्विसेज भी है. Okay, so this goods say I am exporting outside India. So मैं एक कंट्री से दूसरे कंट्री इसको एक्सपोर्ट कर रहा हूं. Correct. Now, see what is happening. My query to government. Exports are classified as zero rated. Exempt नहीं है exports. Exports are classified. Whether आप supply करो taxable goods, whether you supply exempted goods, such goods are classified as zero rated. Right? Is e-invoicing required for the export of goods or export of services outside India? क्या invoice की जरूरत है? सुनो solution. E-invoice is applicable for taxable goods or service and कौन से के लिए? Even exports. So if I export the goods or export the services, चाहे taxable हो, चाहे exempted हो, sir, e-invoice is required. And the invoice shall be applicable for export. It is irrespective that such goods or services are taxable or exempt. Sir, सिर्फ export के लिए e-invoice चाहिए, even for exempted good, even for exempted service, e-invoice is required. ठीक है, next query. E-invoice for supply to unregistered dealer, for supply to unregistered customer. Say a restaurant, सभी लोग खाना खाने आते हैं, अनरजिस्टर होते हैं, उनको रेस्टोरेंट जो इनवॉइस देता है, क्या ई इनवॉइस देना होगा? कैसे होगा? जस्ट सोचो एक मिनट. अनरजिस्टर्ड है रिसीपिएंट, क्या उसको आईटीसी मिलने वाला है? अनरजिस्टर्ड है. थिंक एन आंसर. से आई एम अ सप्लायर, I am supplying taxable goods or taxable service to all of you. You people are recipients, but you don't have GST number. Okay, so now my query to government, is the invoice required for supply of goods or service to unregistered recipient? अब वो तो आईटीसी लेने नहीं वाला, फेक आईटीसी का क्वेश्चन नहीं आता, जीएसटी एवेजन हो नहीं सकता. दिस इज माय व्यू. When I supply goods or service to unregistered recipient, what do you think? Is the invoice required? Understand. E-invoice is applicable only for B2B taxable goods or B2B taxable service. मतलब when supplier and recipient are registered. And exports के लिए चाहिए. Export में recipient is obviously unregistered outside India, but वहाँ जरूरी है. So in this case, when the recipient is unregistered within India, e-invoice is not applicable. E-invoice का जरूरत नहीं है since the recipient is unregistered. क्लियर? एक्सपोर्ट्स में चाहे रिसिपिएंट रजिस्टर हो या अनरजिस्टर हो, चाहिए. एक्सपोर्ट्स में रिसिपिएंट ऑब्वियसली अनरजिस्टर होगा, ई इनवॉइस इज रिक्वायर्ड. बट विद इन इंडिया, इफ आई एम गिविंग टू बी टू बी, रिक्वायर्ड. इफ आई एम गिविंग टू बी टू सी, ई इनवॉइस इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. नहीं चाहिए, जरूरत ही नहीं. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, ई इनवॉइस फॉर सप्लाई पेट्रोल, डीजल, नेचुरल गैस, काइंड ऑफ नॉन जीएसटी सप्लाई. क्या लगता है आपको? आप पेट्रोल भरवाने जाते हो, क्या आपको पेट्रोल पंप वाला ई इनवॉइस देता है? से आई एम अ सप्लायर, आई एम सप्लाइंग टू पेट्रोल, नेचुरल गैस, एविएशन, टर्बाइन फ्यूल, कुछ भी ऐसा देता हूँ, नॉन जीएसटी. माई क्वेरी टू ऑल ऑफ यू, क्या ई इनवॉइस इज रिक्वायर्ड? सोचो. व्हेन आई से नॉन जीएसटी या नॉन टैक्सेबल, दैट मीन्स देयर इज नो जीएसटी, देयर इज नो क्वेश्चन ऑफ टैक्स इवेजन, राइट? सो यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट ने वही बोला, E-invoice is applicable only for B2B taxable goods or service and exports. But e-invoice is not required for exempted goods, nil rated goods, non-GST या non-taxable. जरूरत ही नहीं, जरूरत ही नहीं है आपको इस केस में इनवॉइस की जरूरत नहीं. ठीक है? अंडरस्टूड. सो हेंस ई इनवॉइस शैल नॉट बी एप्लीकेबल. कौन से केसेस में? जब हम नॉन जीएसटी सप्लाई कर रहे हैं, ई इनवॉइस इज नॉट. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट क्वेरी, ई इनवॉइस फॉर सप्लाई टू डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन. ये क्या होता है? से आई एम अ सप्लायर, आई हैव वन ब्रांच इन द स्टेट ऑफ महाराष्ट्र, आई हैव अनदर ब्रांच इन द स्टेट ऑफ दिल्ली. दोनों मेरी ही ब्रांच है. बोथ आर माई ब्रांचेस. करेक्ट. नाउ से आई हैव डन सम ब्रांच ट्रांसफर. I have supplied goods or I have supplied to my branch in Delhi. Okay, distinct person. ये देखो गुड सप्लाई हो गया. नाउ मैं गवर्नमेंट से पूछ रहा हूँ दैट इट इज माई ब्रांच. आई हैव सप्लाइड टू माई सेल्फ ओनली फ्रॉम महाराष्ट्र टू दिल्ली. डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन. दोनों के जीएसटी नंबर अलग है. इज ए इनवॉइस रिक्वायर्ड फॉर सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विस टू डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन? अंडरस्टैंड. E-invoice is applicable for all taxable goods or service and exports. Correct. Now, section 7. Read with schedule 1 and rule 28 and even section 25. क्या होता है? क्या कहता है? ये ब्रांच ट्रांसफर अगर हम कर रहे हैं फ्रॉम माई ब्रांच टू माई ब्रांच आउटसाइड द स्टेट, डिस्टिंक्ट पर्सन, देन इट इज अ टैक्सेबल सप्लाई. Right? GST is applicable once it is taxable. Once GST is applicable, that means e-invoice is required. So even if you do branch transfer of taxable goods, taxable services, distinct person outside the state, separate GST number, e-invoice is required. Be careful. E-invoice required क्योंकि ये taxable है. GST attract होता है, so e-invoice is required. Next FAQ, e-invoice for advances collected on goods or advance collected on services. Example, suppose from this recipient, I'm going to give some services, उसने advance दे दिए मुझे 10 lakh rupees plus 18% GST on 20th March. Now I have supplied services to him on 15th of May 2021. डेट मैंने इश्यू किया इनवॉइस उस पे पता है कब? 15th May 2021. So I've collected advance on 20th March. I supplied service on 15th May and मैंने इनवॉइस भी सेम डे 15th May को ही कर दिया. 15th May ये देखो एडवांस आया. अब आता है क्वेश्चन, is invoice required for GST collected on advances? यानी जब मुझे एडवांस मिला 20th March को, क्या तब मुझे इनवॉइस बनाना है, या 15th में जब मैं सप्लाई कर रहा हूँ सर्विसेज, इनवॉइस इश्यू कर रहा हूँ, तब ही इनवॉइस बनाना है? क्या लगता है सर? क्या लगता है? यहाँ पे देखो सुनो. इफ advances are collected on services, supplier क्या डॉक्यूमेंट देता है? एडवांस रिसीट वाउचर. आई डू नॉट इश्यू टैक्स इनवॉइस. जब इनवॉइस इश्यू ही नहीं हो रहा, तो ई इनवॉइस का क्वेश्चन आ ही नहीं सकता. एम आई राइट? सो सप्लायर इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड टू इश्यू एनी ई इनवॉइस और ई एडवांस रिसीट वाउचर जैसा कोई कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं है. ठीक है. सो ई इनवॉइस का जरूरत एडवांसेस पे नहीं. ठीक है. सो जब 20th मार्च को एडवांस मिला, ई इनवॉइस इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड. बट व्हेन आई एम रेजिंग टैक्स इनवॉइस ऑन हिम ऑन से 15th में, तब ई इनवॉइस इज रिक्वायर्ड. सो इट इज ऑन इनवॉइस, नॉट एन एडवांस रिसीट वाउचर. Also, there is one more point here. What is the point here? On advance, suppose if I collect advance on services, advance that I pay to government, recipient cannot take ITC, right? Recipient को ITC तब मिलेगा जब I raise invoice on. इसीलिए ये पॉइंट है. So when advance are collected, no invoice. When I issue the tax invoice, e-invoice is required. Next, e-invoice by recipient for GST paid under reverse charge. ये पॉइंट सुनो, interesting. Say from this advocate, I have obtained advocate service of say 1 crore rupees. I have taken advocate service of 1 crore. I am registered in GST. Now, it's my responsibility to pay GST under reverse charge, right? So as a recipient, I will generate a self invoice for GST to be paid under reverse charge mechanism. So as I'm taking advocate service and I'm paying GST under reverse charge 18 lakh, एंड मैंने एक सेल्फ इनवॉइस भी क्रिएट किया है. नाउ मेरी गवर्नमेंट से क्वेरी है, इज रिसिपिएंट रिक्वायर्ड टू जनरेट ई इनवॉइस? ये जो मैं सेल्फ इनवॉइस बना रहा हूं मेरे ही नाम पे फॉर रिवर्स चार्ज पेएबल, क्या मुझे इसका भी इनवॉइस बनाना पड़ेगा? व्हाट इज द सॉल्यूशन? लिसन, government said it is the responsibility of the suppliers to generate e-invoice. देखो सप्लायर का काम है जनरेट ई इनवॉइस का, रिसिपिएंट का काम नहीं है। वो भी कब? इफ देयर एग्रीगेट टर्नओवर एक्सीड 50 करोड़ और 100 करोड़ और 500 करोड़। In the given case, I have generated self-invoice, recipient. I have paid GST under reverse charge. I am not required to generate e-invoice for the generated self-invoice. ठीक है, irrespective that my threshold is exceeding 50 crore, 100 crore or 500 crore as applicable. मुझे सेल्फ इनवॉइस पे कभी भी रिसिपिएंट को, सेल्फ इनवॉइस पे कभी भी रिसिपिएंट को नहीं बनाना है ई इनवॉइस। हाँ, ये एडवोकेट अगर रजिस्टर है, उसका टर्नओवर इज से अबाउट 50 करोड़, if he is liable, he will generate e-invoice and he will tick recipient paying GST under reverse charge. ये होगा। Supplier advocate will prepare, he will tick that I will pay GST under reverse charge. Recipient will never ever prepare e-invoice. Correct. Next FAQ. E-invoice for invoice generated by input services distributor. ये क्या है? याद करो पॉइंट। Say I am a recipient, private limited company. My head office is in Maharashtra state and my branch office is say in Delhi state. Now I am supplying audit services. So now this company which has head office and branch in separate state, I am supplying audit services to this company. ओके, एंड मैंने ऑडिट दोनों का किया, महाराष्ट्र स्टेट का भी किया एंड दिल्ली स्टेट का भी किया। नाउ आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू जनरेट अ सेपरेट टैक्स इनवॉइस, एक एक थोड़ी बनाऊंगा अलग अलग स्टेट वाइज। सो नाउ आई प्रिपेयर कंबाइन इनवॉइस ऑफ से 10 लाख प्लस 18%। किस पे बनाऊंगा? हमेशा हेड ऑफिस पे। So I generated combined tax invoice of 10 lakh plus 18% GST on head office ISD number, not regular GST number. ISD number पे मैंने tax invoice बनाया। And now ये जो head office है, ISD number है, वो ये credit distribute करेगी अपने branch दिल्ली को। कैसे? By generating ISD invoice. On the basis of turnover, ISD will distribute say rupees 2 lakh to the branch through ISD invoice. ठीक है, सो मैं हेड ऑफिस पे रेस करूंगा ISD नंबर पे एंड हेड ऑफिस अपने ब्रांच पे रेस करेगी ISD इनवॉइस करके। नाउ क्वेरी टू गवर्नमेंट, is the head office ISD GST number required to raise e-invoice for the distribution of this credit? क्या ISD इनवॉइस जो जनरेट हो रहा है ब्रांच पे दिल्ली पे, क्या इसके लिए e-invoice is required or regular any kind of software invoice is allowed? Understand? Just now, what did I tell you? E-invoice is required for what? Outward taxable supply, जो reseller का responsibility to generate e-invoice. Head office और branch कोई outward supply नहीं हो रही है. It is just distributing the credit. Head office ने कोई supply नहीं दी है अपनी branch को. So in this case, for ISD invoice, e-invoice is not applicable. If the ISD is preparing an invoice on branch as ISD invoice, e-invoice is not required. Regular invoice बन सकता है. Okay. Now next point. See this point. Say supplier. I am a supplier. I am supplying goods of 10 lakh plus 18% GST to this recipient. ठीक है. I have issued e-invoice. Correctly. मैंने invoice बना के उस पे दे दिया. Now what happened? This recipient did not like goods. So he returns certain goods to me, say of rupees 1 lakh plus 18% GST. कुछ goods 10 lakh में से 10% goods मुझे return कर दिए. Now as a supplier, it is my responsibility कि जब भी goods return होते हैं, which document I need to generate? Which document? Credit note. So I am generating credit note of 1 lakh plus 18% GST. Now my query to government. ये जो मैंने credit note supplier ने raise की, क्या इसके लिए भी मुझे इनवॉइस बनाना पड़ेगा फॉर द इश्यूएंस ऑफ द क्रेडिट नोट? लिसन व्हाट एक्ट सेज, ई इनवॉइस इज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर आउटवर्ड टैक्सेबल सप्लाई ऑफ गुड्स और सर्विसेज व्हिच इंक्लूड्स इश्यू ऑफ टैक्स इनवॉइस एंड डेबिट नोट एंड इवन क्रेडिट नोट। सबके लिए सप्लायर को इनवॉइस बनाना है। If I have supplied goods and it's goods के relation में I'm issuing debit note, e-invoice is required. If I have supplied goods, some goods are returned and I'm issuing credit note, e-invoice is required. आपके पास option नहीं है. So if I'm supplying goods or service, I'm generating debit note and credit note in relation to such goods or service, e-invoice is required. For issue of credit note, sir, e-invoice is required. Okay, so ये point था हमारा FAQ, e-invoice for issuance of credit and debit note required. But say I'm issuing financial credit note, no GST on it, right? So there is no question of e-invoice. GST है ही नहीं, मतलब it is exempt जैसा. So e-invoice financial credit note के लिए जरूरत नहीं है. Getting it? ये हमारा point है सारे. Now, next FAQ, e-invoice for supply of goods or service or both to SEZ unit or SEZ developer. इसको अगर किया तो कैसे होगा? This time I'm not exporting. I'm supplying to SEZ unit or SEZ developer. Say I'm a supplier. I'm supplying goods or service to either special economic zone units or to special economic zone developer. These are also zero rated, right? Supplying to SEZ units and SEZ developer just like exports. These are also classified as zero rated. Is invoicing required for supply? What do you think? You must be getting an answer. See what I told you during export. E-invoice is required for outward taxable goods or taxable service. Supply to SEZ are zero rated, not exempted. ये एग्जाम नहीं है, ये टैक्सेबल ही है, सिर्फ इसको क्लासिफाई कर देते हैं हम एज जीरो रेटेड बिकॉज आई एम गिविंग टू SEZ यूनिट and SEZ developer. Since it is zero rated, not exempted, supply to SEZ in this case shall require e-invoice. So if you are supplying to SEZ unit or SEZ developer, sir, e-invoice is required. Similarly, if I am exporting to outside India, e-invoice is required. Correct? Now, most important point. Say invoice is not issued by the supplier. What will happen? Now, this is a supplier. He has supplied goods of say 50 lakh plus 18% GST to me. Okay, I availed input tax credit in my GST return. GSTR 3B. मैंने तो avail कर लिया. This supplier, he was liable for invoice with effect from 1st April 21. But for some reason, it did not get registered on e-invoice portal. He did not generate e-invoice. He gave me physical invoice. I didn't have any knowledge that he was liable. What will happen? What is going to happen to the recipient? What shall be the consequences on the recipient if the supplier is not generating e-invoice? यार उसका fault है, recipient को क्या problem हो सकता है, क्या consequences है? Listen carefully. Please listen carefully. This is a big thing. Huh? If supplier of goods or service is liable for e-invoice but failed to generate e-invoice, then जो physical invoice आया, that is invalid invoice. Whatever physical invoice is giving, that is invalid. E-invoice number नहीं है तो वो invalid invoice है. It is as good as no invoice is received. My ITC, recipient ITC shall be reversed. Recipient का ITC सर रिवर्स हो जाएगा, ये पॉइंट है. So for the fault of the supplier, ITC of the recipient shall be reversed. Okay, now as a taxpayer, we all are worried. If I'm a recipient registered in GST, what I'm going to do? How will I verify? Listen how to verify. You all are requested to verify the status of applicability of e-invoice of each supplier. Repeat, I am repeating, हर एक जो भी आपका supplier है, it's your responsibility, recipient's responsibility to verify whether your supplier is liable or whether your supplier is not liable for e-invoicing. ठीक है, तो हर सप्लायर का आप यहाँ पे चेक कर लो. कौन से वेबसाइट पे? invoice1.gst.gov.in. ये वेबसाइट आपकी ओपन होगी. यहाँ पे आप सर्च में ई इनवॉइस स्टेटस ऑफ टैक्स पेयर डालिए. जो भी आपके सप्लायर का जीएसटी नंबर है, प्लीज पुट हियर and check the status whether supplier is liable. See if he is not enabled, is not liable, तो physical invoice is valid. Okay, but हर एक supplier का देखना है. सब आप दूसरे नंबर डालिए. यहाँ लिखा है that your supplier is enabled. So if you do not receive e-invoice, reject that invoice. Okay, so हर supplier का, each supplier you are requested to check the status of e-invoice. अगर e-invoice liable था and is generating physical invoice, no ITC to the recipient. Big problem, biggest problem. Okay, so I request all of you to check the status of the each of your supplier. Okay? Yeah. So let us move to next FAQ, exemption in generation of e-invoice. Which class of taxpayers are exempted from generating e-invoice? Even though their aggregate annual turnover exceed rupees 50 crore, still उनको invoice नहीं बनाना है. ये कौन है? See, following suppliers are exempted from generation of e-invoice, even though their turnover in 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20 is greater than 50. नहीं जरूरत है. कौन है वो सप्लायर? SCZ units. If SCZ units are supplying goods or service, उनको invoice बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है. They have not said SCZ developers. Huh? It is only SCZ units, not SCZ developer. Banks, जो credit card charge and etc. They raise invoices. NBFC, financial institution, जो भी ये लोग के loan processing charge हो या credit card, debit card charges हो, जो भी invoice raise होते, they will not be required to generate e-invoice, even though their turnover is greater than 50 crore. Insurance company, GTA, Goods Transport Agency, इनको भी invoice बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है. The suppliers who are supplying goods transportation services not required to generate e-invoice. Next, suppliers who are supplying passenger transport service like bus service, okay, railways and aircraft who are supplying passenger transport service, जो भी ये लोग टिकट सेल करते हैं, that will not be generated as an invoice. And the final, multiplicity cinema, multiplex cinema suppliers of service by way of admission to the exhibition of cinematographic films, जैसे मूवी multiplexes, ये जो भी टिकट सेल करेंगे, that will be regular invoice, not e-invoice, not required at all. ओके, मैक्सिमम दे विल बी सेलिंग टू द अनरजिस्टर्ड कस्टमर, सो इनवॉइस वैसे भी नहीं आता B2C. ओके, अब देखो SEZ का हमने जो पॉइंट डिस्कस किया उसमें एग्जम्पशन का समरी देखो. जनरेशन ऑफ ई इनवॉइस फॉर सप्लाई टू SEZ एंड सप्लाई बाय SEZ. सपोज आई एम अ सप्लायर एंड आई एम सप्लाइंग गुड्स और आई एम सप्लाइंग सर्विस टू SEZ यूनिट और SEZ डेवलपर. सर मुझे इनवॉइस बनाना पड़ेगा. Okay, if I am supplying to SCZ unit, it is zero rated, e-invoice बनाना होगा. Similarly, अगर SCZ developer goods supply कर रहा है, service supply कर रहा है, that SCZ developer shall also generate e-invoice. Exemption is only to SCZ units. If SCZ units are supplying goods, SCZ units are supplying service, सिर्फ इनको exempt है, बाकी किसी को भी exemption में cover नहीं. Okay, so this was our entire topic of e-invoice. ये हमारे FAQ केस स्टडीज पूरे थे जिसके एक समरी डिस्कस करते हैं. Suppose I am supplying taxable goods or services to registered person, e-invoice is applicable. Suppose I am supplying to unregistered customer, sir, e-invoice is not applicable. जरूरत ही नहीं क्योंकि ITC उनको मिलता नहीं. If I am supplying exempt goods, nil rated, non-GST, non-taxable, petrol, etc., will there be any GST evasion? नहीं, तो भी invoice की जरूरत नहीं. Next, export of taxable goods, export of services, e-invoice is required. Even though it is taxable, even though it is exempted, दोनों ही केस में e-invoice required. अगर export exempt goods कर रहे हो, e-invoice is required. India to India exempt goods है, e-invoice not required. High sea sale, third party shipment outside India, no e-invoice. E-invoice की जरूरत ही नहीं. Next, if I'm advocate is giving me services, I'm paying GST under reverse charge. Recipient is not required to prepare e-invoice. ISD invoice, no e-invoice is required. Credit note, debit notes. If I am returning goods or the party is returning goods, I'm raising credit notes, e-invoice is applicable. But if I'm issuing financial credit note, e-invoice is not applicable. And finally, suppose if I collected advances and I'm paying GST on advances, which document I will raise? Advance receipt voucher. I'm not going to generate invoice. So there is no question of e-invoice. So this was the FAQ and case study for e-invoicing. Hope you have liked the lecture. If you have any doubts, you can email to me. मेरे lecture के beginning मेरा ID and mobile number आपसे share था. Okay, so request you to please put an email if you have any doubts or any queries. Okay, and just request you to share this video with maximum people. So जिनको भी और भी डाउट्स इन ई इनवॉइस राइट नाउ इट्स बहुत ही यूजफुल है ये टॉपिक. सो ये प्लीज आप मैक्सिमम लोगों के साथ शेयर कीजिए. ठीक है. Thank you so much each and everyone. And just one important announcement. I begin one GST course which I am going to share it on Google Drive. I've already begun this, but whosoever want to subscribe to GST Google Drive course, 100 to 120 hours की GST ट्रेनिंग होगी. पूरा GST आपको सिखाऊंगे. थ्रू भी केस स्टडीज भी आएंगे and practical GST return filing and everything will be there. I prepared one 2 minutes video. Please request you to watch it. चलिए.